Have you ever wondered why the moment you stop caring, everyone suddenly cares about you? The irony of human existence slaps us in the face every day, doesn't it? You chase and chase after someone or something, desperately, pathetically, only to be met with cold indifference. Then the exact moment, you turn away. Suddenly you're the center of their universe. What a cosmic joke we're all part of. But is it really a joke, or is there something deeper happening beneath the surface? Something that the great Carl Jung understood long before our dopamine-addicted society could comprehend it. Today, we're ripping off the comfortable mask of delusion you've been wearing. The truth about becoming unattainable will either transform your existence or send you crawling back to your comfortable mediocrity. Your choice. Are you brave enough to continue? Of course you are. You're still here. But let me warn you, after this you won't see yourself or others the same way again. The paradox that controls your life. Let's get uncomfortably honest. Most of you watching right now are trapped in a cycle of desperate availability. You answer texts instantly. You clear your schedule at the first hint. Someone important might grace you with their presence. You abandon your own needs to accommodate others. And what has it gotten you? Respect? Admiration? Love? No. It's gotten you taken for granted. Jung would say you've fallen into what I call the availability trap. The more available you make yourself, the less valuable you become in the social marketplace. It's not fair, it's not kind, but denying this reality is like denying gravity because you don't like falling. The most terrifying thing, Jung once wrote, is to accept oneself completely. And part of that acceptance is recognizing that your desperation for validation is precisely what repels the very validation you seek. Funny how that works, isn't it? When you're constantly available, you become as exciting as yesterday's leftovers. But become genuinely unattainable, not as a ploy, but as a natural consequence of valuing yourself. And suddenly you're the feast everyone's starving for. The shadow of desire. Here's where Jung's brilliance really illuminates our pathetic social dance. Jung talked extensively about the shadow, those aspects of ourselves we repress and deny. But what he understood that most self-help gurus miss is that our attraction to others follows the same pattern. When you become unattainable, you activate the shadow desires in others. You become the embodiment of what they deny themselves: freedom, self-respect, authenticity. Think about it. When was the last time you desperately wanted someone who was desperately available to you? Never? Exactly. The human psyche is wired for pursuit. We value what we have to work for. We desire what might slip through our fingers. When you're constantly available, you're denying others the psychological thrill of the chase. You're robbing them of the opportunity to project their fantasies onto the blank canvas of your absence. I can already hear some of you protesting, but that's manipulation. That's playing games. Is it, though? Or is it simply understanding the fundamental mechanics of human psychology? Jung would argue it's the latter. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves, he said. And nothing irritates people more than not getting what they want the moment they want it. The individuation of becoming unavailable. Now let's get to the heart of Jung's wisdom as it applies to unattainability. Jung's concept of individuation, the process of becoming your true, whole self, is fundamentally a process of becoming unavailable to external validation. When you embark on the journey of individuation, you're essentially saying, I am no longer available to be defined by others' perceptions. And guess what happens? The world loses its mind. Your friends can't categorize you anymore. Your family doesn't know how to manipulate you. Potential partners can't easily predict your reactions. You become psychologically unattainable, and therefore infinitely more valuable in the economy of human attention. Isn't that hilarious? The moment you stop giving a damn about being valuable to others, your value skyrockets. Jung understood this paradox decades before playing hard to get became dating advice. But here's the twist that most people miss. This isn't about pretending to be busy or ignoring texts for calculated periods. That's amateur hour, and people can smell that desperation from a mile away. True unattainability comes from genuine self-absorption. Not in the narcissistic sense, but in the sense of being genuinely absorbed in your own journey. When your focus shifts from how do I appear to others to how do I appear to myself, that's when the magic happens. That's when you become truly unattainable, not physically, but psychologically. And psychological unattainability is what creates the gravitational pull that brings everyone into your orbit. The collective unconscious response. Jung's concept of the collective unconscious helps explain why unattainability works universally. There are archetypal patterns hardwired into our psyches, and one of the most powerful is the archetype of the hero's journey, the quest for that which is difficult to obtain. When you become unattainable, you trigger this archetypal response in others. You become the holy grail to their questing knight. You become the dragon's treasure. You become the summit of the mountain. And who doesn't want to be the prize rather than the beggar? But let me ask you something deeply uncomfortable. How many of your relationships, romantic, professional, even friendships, are based on your desperate availability? How many people in your life value you primarily because you're always there, always accommodating, always bending yourself into pretzel shapes to fit their needs? If that question made you squirm, good. Discomfort is the price of admission for growth. The persona and the unattainable self. Jung wrote extensively about the persona, the mask we wear for society. Most people spend their lives crafting a persona that screams, "Pick me, I'm available. I'll adapt to whatever you want." It's the psychological equivalent of a clearance sale sign. But what happens when you drop that persona? What happens when you allow yourself to be complex, contradictory, and occasionally absent? You guessed it. People become obsessed with figuring you out. The human mind abhors a vacuum. When you make yourself scarce, not just physically, but emotionally and psychologically, others will fill that vacuum with projections, fantasies, and curiosity. Think about the most magnetic people you've encountered. Were they the ones desperately seeking approval, or were they the ones who seemed to operate according to their own internal compass, indifferent to whether, why, who came along for the ride? We all know the answer. The truly magnetic forces in our lives are those who seem complete without us. It's maddening, it's frustrating, and it's absolutely true. One of Jung's most fascinating concepts is synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that seem to defy probability. When you become unattainable, you create a synchronistic field where what you previously pursued now pursues you. The job you stopped obsessing over calls you for an interview. The person you stopped chasing suddenly blows up your phone. The opportunities you stopped begging for start appearing effortlessly. Is this some mystical law of attraction? No. It's simpler and more profound than that. When you become unattainable, you disrupt the expected pattern. You create cognitive dissonance in others, and humans will go to extraordinary lengths to resolve cognitive dissonance. If someone is used to you being available and suddenly you're not, their mind can't compute the change. The only way to restore cognitive equilibrium is to pursue what previously pursued them. It's not magic, it's psychology. And it's hilarious to watch once you understand it. The same people who ignored you when you were available will perform Olympic-level mental gymnastics to explain why they now need your attention. The animus projection Jung believed we all carry internal images of the opposite sex, what he called the anima, feminine aspect in men, and animus, masculine aspect in women. When you become unattainable, you become the perfect blank screen for others to project these idealized images onto. Available people reveal too much of themselves too quickly, destroying the mystery necessary for these projections. Unattainable people maintain enough distance to allow these powerful psychological forces to operate. Think about it. How many times have you built someone up in your mind precisely because you didn't know everything about them? How many times has the reality of a person failed to live up to the exciting potential you project onto them? That's the power of unattainability. It's not just that you're hard to get. It's that your absence creates space for others to fill with their most powerful unconscious material. Here's where we pivot from the interpersonal to the intrapsychic. Because becoming unattainable isn't just about how others see you, it's about how you see yourself. When you're constantly available to others, you're unavailable to yourself. Your energy, attention, and identity become fragmented across countless external validations. You become, as Jung would say, alienated from yourself with a capital S. Becoming unattainable to others makes you available to yourself. It creates the psychological space necessary for individuation, for becoming who you truly are rather than who others need you to be. And paradoxically, this self-connection is precisely what makes you magnetic to others. They sense that you've tapped into something authentic, something that doesn't depend on external validation. They want what you have, not your time or attention, but your self-sufficiency. Isn't that the ultimate cosmic joke? The moment you no longer need others' validation is the moment they become desperate to validate you. Let's get practical for a moment. How does this Jungian understanding of unattainability translate into your actual life? First, stop responding immediately. Not as a game, but because you're genuinely busy with your own priorities. Jung would see our modern addiction to immediate response as a form of psychological slavery. Second, get comfortable with silence. The unattainable self doesn't fill every void with noise. Learn to let conversations breathe. Learn to let questions hang unanswered. Learn to let others wonder. Third, develop genuine interests that have nothing to do with how others perceive you. The most attractive quality in any human is passionate absorption in something beyond themselves. When you're genuinely fascinated by something, you become fascinating. Fourth, practice saying no without explanation. Not rudely, but matter-of-factly. "No, that doesn't work for me" is a complete sentence. The available self feels compelled to justify every boundary. The unattainable self knows that boundaries need no justification. Fifth, embrace your contradictions. Available people try to present a consistent, pleasing image. Unattainable people allow themselves to be complex, sometimes mysterious, and occasionally contradictory. Jung called this holding the tension of opposites, and it's the mark of psychological maturity, the shadow side of unattainability. Now, a word of caution. There's a shadow side to unattainability that Jung would immediately recognize. When unattainability becomes a strategy rather than an authentic expression of self-value, it backfires spectacularly. People can sense when you're playing games. They can sense when your unavailability comes from fear rather than strength. They can sense when you're trying to manipulate rather than simply living on your own terms. Jung would say that true individuation requires both autonomy and connection, both independence and interdependence. The goal isn't to become permanently unreachable. The goal is to become selectively available based on your authentic values rather than your anxious need for validation. The archetypal power move. Becoming unattainable is, in Jungian terms, an archetypal power move. It's tapping into ancient patterns of human interaction that run far deeper than conscious thought. Think about the archetypal figures that captivate us across cultures: the mysterious stranger, the wise hermit, the self-sufficient warrior, the emotionally controlled leader. All share the quality of unattainability. All maintain some essential part of themselves that remains beyond reach. Jung would say these archetypes captivate us because they represent aspects of wholeness that we're striving toward. When you embody these qualities, you become a living symbol of what others unconsciously seek. And that's why when you become unattainable, the world beats a path to your door. Not because you're playing hard to get, but because you're embodying an archetypal truth about human value. We've come full circle to the ultimate paradox. True connection only happens between two whole, self-sufficient people who choose each other rather than need each other. Jung understood that the highest form of relationship isn't based on need fulfillment, but on mutual recognition of each other's wholeness. The meeting of two personalities, he wrote, is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But this transformation can only occur when both parties bring their complete selves to the table, not when one is desperately available and the other holds all the power. When you become unattainable, you're not avoiding connection. You're creating the preconditions for genuine connection. You're saying, I am whole with or without you. Now, from this place of completeness, let's see what we can create together. And ironically, that's when the magic happens. That's when people who previously ignored you suddenly can't get enough. That's when opportunities that eluded you suddenly appear. That's when your value in any marketplace, romantic, professional, social, exponentially increases. Not because you're playing mind games, not because you're manipulating, but because you're finally honoring your own inherent worth. The call to unattainability. So here's my challenge to you. Become unattainable, not as a strategy, but as a commitment to your own worth. Stop answering every call. Stop explaining every boundary. Stop making yourself endlessly available to people who see you as an option rather than a priority. Start building a life so compelling that your absence is felt. Start cultivating self-sufficiency so profound that others wonder what you've discovered. Start moving to the rhythm of your own internal drummer rather than dancing to everyone else's tune. Jung would tell you that this path isn't easy. The collective will resist your individuation. Those who benefited from your availability will protest. Your own conditioning will tempt you back into old patterns. But on the other side of that resistance is a life of authentic power. Not power over others, but power from within. And the beautiful irony? The more unattainable you become, the more the world will try to attain you. Like this video if you're ready to embrace your unattainable self. Subscribe if you want more brutal psychological truths that most people are too afraid to tell you. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, especially if that someone has been too available for their own good. Remember, in the marketplace of human attention, scarcity creates value. Become the scarcest, most valuable version of yourself, and watch as the world adjusts its pricing accordingly. Until next time, stay unattainable, my friends.